So welcome, folks. Um, yeah, I'm happy to be with you. So we'll do the usual thing and say a few words, and we'll sit and offer some reflections. So meditation involves directing our attention. It involves making effort. It involves exerting a certain kind of intentionality and willfulness. And it involves all these things. And yet, all of those things generally invoke a sense of self, direct the sense of attentional agency, the sense of making effort, sense of intentionality or willfulness. And so meditation also is about a kind of awareness that doesn't depend on attentional direction. It's about effortlessness, the kind of deep relaxation of a pure kind of receptivity. It's about choicelessness. It's about relinquishing all sense of like doing, all sense of willfulness, all sense of autonomy, really. It's about all this stuff, right? And it's not like the self is bad and not self is good. In a way, one of the kind of effects of practice over these years is the recognition like, oh yeah, I really at a deep level don't care how meditation goes. The viscosity of self that arises. It's not one's right, the other wrong, but we're learning to um, different chambers of the mind capacities. And so, yeah, sometimes, and I'm going to have to give instructions in about 30 seconds, and I'm going to talk about directing effort and marshaling the attention in one way or another, and making choices, these things. And and sometimes we do that so as to enter realms of choicelessness, effortlessness, the absence of willfulness. So somehow I felt inspired to say that, but I really, really do not know how I will guide this meditation. But we will practice one way or another. So find a posture that feels sustainable. Self is not the last word of the Dharma, nor is not self. We're not trying to vanquish some alter ego in us or something. Just studying the ways that the intentional direction of attention, the effort we make, the choices we make, this can compound a sense of the meditator orchestrating all of it. And so we begin by making some choices, by directing our attention, by rallying our energy. What's the meditative anchor, kind of home base for the attention? What's inside the circle that we draw that we call the focus space, and what's outside it? Maybe inside it is just the sensations of breathing. The rest of the world is outside it. Maybe we marshal our effort, the effort to let go of discursive thinking when it grabs us. Very gentle effort of directing our attention, spotlighting the breathing, for example. Sense of some measure of autonomy, of choice making, of strategizing and preference. All of that's okay. So we establish some stability. maybe we give ourselves little mini Dharma pep talks, reminders, the wisdom it would be wise to remember now. It's quite natural for there to be a sense of the doer and the deed, the meditator and the object, the meditated. The spotlight and the stage. The worker and the effort. And so much Dharma goodness develops along these lines. But we also don't want to miss this other dimension of practice that involves this kind of deep surrender of the doer and the doing. That leaves no room for the meditator to congeal where matter and the mirror merge. This is not something we can do. The doing sense of responsibility is exactly what forecloses this possibility. To the extent we do anything, we do surrender, relinquishment, trust the silence, offer ourselves up to the Dharma's grace. The very notion of a kind of hierarchy, not self, higher than self, guarantees the congealing of self. The Dharma contains so many different medicines. Just kind of take what's offered by this moment. Okay. So it's good to sit with you. Dharma practice, we often kind of, I don't know, find ourselves circling back to old loves, things that maybe we put aside as we're practicing or training. They sort of become relevant once again. And I was remembering undergraduate class, philosophy class. The professor said, we're, we're all ideas in the mind of God. And they were alluding to, that's a phrase from George Berkeley, 1700s, this philosophical school of idealism, the idea that reality consists exclusively of minds and their ideas, no material existence. And that phrase, we're all ideas in the mind of God, is just like did something to me. And the Buddha was not an idealist in that sense, believed in the reality of things, of people, of trees, of chairs. But maybe we can say in certain ways that the Buddha was an idealist about one thing: suffering. The core of all things, the Buddha said, is liberation. The core of all things is liberation. And the experience of suffering is far more plastic, more fluid than a table or a chair. We've taken our suffering to be more like a chair than maybe we should. And so the Dhammapada begins, all experience is preceded by mind, made by mind, led by mind. And this is not the claim that the world doesn't exist or it's all just an idea in the mind of God. It doesn't mean that, but what it means is we're always doing something to experience. Our mind mediates all of it. It's more plastic than we appreciate. And when we think about clinging, this kind of core problem the Buddha highlighted, when we think about clinging, we usually think about the very coarse level of clinging, of very obvious grasping, aversion, the craving for some sense pleasure or something is like very obvious. The aversion towards some unpleasantness, very obvious, right? But before the clinging even begins, there's clinging. And some of what we're doing in our Dharma practice is noticing the clinging before the clinging before the eruption of very coarse level clinging, right? And so maybe we have the sense of like we're just, okay, I'm just sitting here, right? Sitting here, we're waiting for the world to kind of greet us, right? And there are sights and sounds and thought and feeling, right? And it's almost as if we imagine having no mind until there's sense contact, right? Until something, the world hits us, there's no mind, or there's no place for clinging to arise. And so it's as if like the models of the world that we have are entirely reactive. They just react to incoming sense data. They're inactive or quiet, and then with experience, the models reactivate, right? And then maybe I'll cling. But our models never idle. Our mind does not idle, does not idle. Our models are being reiterated moment by moment, even when it's very simple, even when there's not a lot of coarse grasping or aversion, right? So in that the chain of dependent origination, the sequence that is often highlighted: contact, feeling, craving, clinging, contact, feeling, craving, clinging. But and there's a ton of action there, right? And it's part of why I think we speak about feeling so much, this kind of like the valence, the affective arousal and valence. But before that even happens, right? Before that even happens, there's sankhara, volitional formations. Ajahn Sujito calls the sankharas like formative energies. Formative energies. Sankharas shape experience. They're woven into the model we have of experience of the world. And so maybe we say that that's the clinging before the clinging before the clinging, the subtle clinging before the contact and the feeling, and then the more dramatic clinging that can arise after the feeling. But we're becoming, as practitioners, we're becoming more sensitive to the clinging that precedes the clinging. We're becoming more sensitive to the ways our motivations suffuse consciousness even before there's the coarse clinging. The ways wanting and knowing are not strictly separable. And so just in the movement of our attention was highlighting in the sit, the movement of our attention it often functions as a kind of appendage of our wanting. And so it's a profound kind of journey. It's subtle work to see what is the mind doing sort of before anything happens, before we're the eruption of more coarse level clinging, craving. And so we look, what are the effects of the kind of more subtle, I don't know whether we say clinging, subtle clinging in shaping the view. So clinging is, just almost woven into our biology, kind of strategy for control, for acquisition, to manage samsara, just to stay okay. And is very innocent in that way. I want to appreciate the innocence of that. But in order to sort of like orchestrate our clinging, we need to make the world more solid. Everything becomes a thing. And the world, we sort of freeze the world into things. The world gets divided into that which helps, that which hinders, friends and enemies. And in that gesture, the self, the sense of self becomes more, is reified. It becomes more real, more viscous, more congealed. And so the sense of the kind of this fundamental alienation of dualism is born out of clinging, born out of clinging. And some of what was pointed to in the as we're sitting, right? And part of what meditation is about, part of what our practice is about, is detecting and relaxing these more subtle layers of clinging, the formative energies that shape the view. And we start to see, yeah, always to cling, to strategize. We need a self, basically, but letting go, relinquishment does not. The third Zen patriarch said, when the subject disappears, there can be no measuring and comparing. The subject disappears, there can be no measuring and comparing. The need to make sense of the moment, the need to narrativize, to tell a story about the moment, the need to measure and compare, the need to kind of freeze experience into language. This is what begins to fall away as we relax this subtler layer of clinging. And a lot of there's no room for so many of the habits that get us into trouble. So we surrender. There's no impulse towards measurement and, comparison and evaluation, and just everything becomes much, much simpler and wondrous. We're simultaneously disenchanted with samsara, but amazed too. And so we practice. We'll keep exploring. Don't let the heart's gesture of relinquishment become ensnared in the doingness of self. Okay, stop there. Offer this for your consideration. Look forward to being back next week.